Makoto Yuki is finally in the game, and honestly, I think people may be expecting a little too much from him. He is not bad at all, in fact, he is still very strong, but after testing him, I don't think he is that much better than Kasumi, as some players may expect. So in this video, I want to go over what stood out, how important his weapon and dupes really are, and whether he's worth pulling. So I'll very quickly talk over the kit here. I will save more on the mechanics and how you play him on a separate video. So generally how it works is he gains stacks from his skills, DAG, then you spend those stacks and use skill 3. That's the general gist of it. There is one thing I want to point out, rather important thing, is the way you get the stack and also this passive. So one way you get stacks is from buff, healing and shield, but it has to be a skill that targets yourself. It says excluding effects that target the foe, so if you use like a fire ice skill from the twins, you don't get stack. You only get stack from self-targeting skill. Like for example, a Marion skill 3 or even Ange. Ange also counts as a skill, a buff to ally. You only get this once per turn. Same thing for this passive. This passive is also very good, 7.2% crit damage times 3. This one also only characters that buff, heal or shield, and it's a self-targeting skill. So something like Tempest Wind skill 3, Ange also. That's why those two are actually really good for Makoto, because they're self-target, they can activate this. And also this. So you don't have to worry about losing stacks or not having enough stacks. But yeah, that's just a general gist of the kit. Again, I'll talk about more of the kit and the technical side in a future video. But let's go through the weapon. I'm sure most of you are very curious, how much better is this 5-star weapon actually? Because when you look at the 4-star, it buffs attack, same thing as the 5-star weapon. It buffs party's damage, 34.4. It's actually more than this, 34%. The only extra thing that the weapon gives is the crit rate, 16.3%. And also for those curious, the 4-star weapon does activate. Actually, I don't even understand how it activates. It says Makoto grants a buff to an ally, but for some reason, anybody can trigger this on the team. Or your other teammates can trigger this for some reason. I don't understand how it works, but it works, I guess. You just get a stack from everybody. So you pretty much will always have this 100% of the time, so you don't have to worry about this. Anyways, back to 5-star weapon, you get crit rate, but how much better is it? And I think many people will assume that the 5-star weapon is a skip, because the only thing it gives is a crit rate. However, my findings say otherwise. You can see that I tested this on 2 different bosses with pretty, I won't say very different team, but it's a different team. This one I was using Tempest Wind and Twins. This one I was using Turbo and Tempest Wind. They're about 19%. This is actually a surprisingly high number. I was actually quite surprised by this, because the only thing 5-star weapon offers is the crit rate, and just crit rate alone, it increases that much. But when I think about it, it's not super surprising, because there's one character on the team that causes this. At least I think so. And that character is Tempest Wind. The reason is because Tempest Wind buffs a lot of crit damage, up to like 100% or more. And the more crit damage you buff, the more important crit rate becomes. That's just how the calculation works. Since Tempest Wind buffs so much crit damage, the crit rate from the 5-star weapon becomes very important. For a bit of context, both of these fights, for the 4-star weapon, my Makoto Yuki was only around 85% crit rate. And even 85% crit rate compared to 100% crit rate is 19% increase. Absolutely insane. However, don't panic first. Before you start to think, oh my god, 19% is crazy, I should get a 5-star weapon. Hold on first. What you should do first is do your crit rate calculation. This percentage here will decrease the higher your crit rate you can get for your Makoto Yuki using only 4-star weapon. So you need to do your calculation. You need to try and get your crit rate substats up. So let me show you a very quick sample on how I do calculation. So let me assume this team Twins, Tempest Wind and Makoto Yuki. So the first thing I do is uncheck the 5% first, because what is shown here should also be what you need on the stat screen, the out of battle stat screen. This 5% default crit rate is everybody has this 5%, so just remove this first, okay? This then you just include, okay, 1%. And then let me just untick everything first so I can show you how to do this. Very simple. You just tick whatever skill you're going to use. That's all. Make sure you put in like Diagonal Access, Rebellion, Revolution. So I would use a Rebellion, I would use a Tempest Wind skill 3, and then Hope and Ruin, the card set. And then you can see that I need 54% crit rate. Very, very high. If you are using Revolution on the rotation, you just click this, it becomes 40.9%. But again, it really depends on what you plan to use. Because if you do Rebellion Revolution, that means you have less space for defense debuff, which is also very important for Makoto Yuki. And this side is where you do the pierce rate calculation. I'm not gonna go through this, you just mess it around yourself. You will see like the needed crit rate, needed pierce here. Then you just adjust this on your cards, your substats and stuff. Try to reach the required number. That's how you optimize your score. If you can reach the required crit rate without the 5-star weapon, then you don't need the 5-star weapon. If you can't, or if you are way below the required crit rate, then 5-star weapon is good to have. Especially when you're using Tempest Wind on the team as well. Which I think you should, because Tempest Wind and Makoto Yuki very well to pair together. I will talk about it in a separate video, why they're so good together. So overall the weapon feels pretty solid. But what about dupes? I've actually tested both A1 and A2 a little bit, so I can give you a little bit of data here. So the A1 gives extra effects to all the 3 skills. Skill 1 will do 1 extra hit, Skill 2 will buff pierce rate for party, then Skill 3 will get extra crit rate if you have max stacks of the moon phase. Overall decent stuff, but the thing I don't like is this thing. I don't like it when the game buffs only a part of a kid's crit rate or pierce rate. In this case, it only buffs the crit rate of Skill 3. The other annoying part is that Skill 3 itself also has a pierce rate buff only to itself, only to Skill 3. And I actually tested this already, but you actually want to include the 11.7% pierce in the pierce calculation, because Skill 1 and the highlight does also a good chunk of damage. So if you include pierce rate calc, then Skill 1 and DRG will do less damage, which will impact your overall score, at least for A0, R0, Makoto Yuki. Then the A1 also buffs crit rate for the Skill 3. This one I haven't really tested this, but I think it's also annoying that the 16% crit rate is only for Skill 3, because if you include a calculation on this one, then your Skill 1 will do less damage because you don't have the required crit rate. And the Skill 1 becomes a bit more significant in terms of damage because it does 1 more hit. It really depends on how significant is the non-Skill 3 damage. At least for A0, R0 and maybe even A1, Skill 1 does a significant amount of damage, or at least damage that you cannot ignore when it comes to the crit and pierce calc. Now for A2, A2 is very strong because when Makoto gets 4 moon phase stacks, he will automatically activate Skill 2 one time. So this also changes the rotation. Though I wouldn't say change rotation, but it makes the rotation even better, I guess. You still do Skill 1, Skill 3, but now the Skill 2 will auto-cast. And this A2 actually pairs well with the A1, because A1 actually buffs the Skill 2 to include pierce rate, and A2 automatically casts the Skill 2. So you get pierce rate, you get crit damage, you get attack buff. So it's a very strong increase. But what about in terms of numbers? How much increase is it actually? It's overall a good increase. 11% from A1, from A0 to A1, then 16% from A1 to A2. So I mean, no surprises here. A2 is a bigger jump because it literally gives you another free use of a skill 2, right? And you also get more pierce from the A1. So it's a good increase. A1 itself is also a solid increase, 11%. But yeah, not really needed. Okay, you just get it if you have enough gems or something. But I personally would just thought A0, R0. It's fine A0, R0. So at the start of battle, I said that Makoto Yuki and Kasumi, they're not that far apart. I don't just say this because of feeling, because I've tested it, and I can show you some comparison, number comparison, like 3 of them, to prove that it's not really that far apart. If at all, actually. That being said, I have a big disclaimer, and that is Makoto isn't at his full potential yet. He will be at full potential once his dedicated supports are out, the other C supports like Yukari or Junpei. I'm just strictly talking about how he feels right now in global with the current supports that we have. So one of the tests I did was on the Nexus of Dreams bow. I only used 1 DPS here because Nexus of Dreams is actually quite a good place to test the DPS because everything is like neutral except for the, Makoto obviously, the boss is for Makoto obviously, so the score is going to be higher. So it's about 50 million increase. You might think like, okay, Makoto is stronger, but you need to consider that this boss is built for Makoto. 2 important things you need to consider actually. The first thing is that the boss is weak to fire. That's already a 20% fire damage for Makoto. The second thing is the gimmick. The stage gimmick gives 30% fire damage after you use DOG. So that's another 30%. So we can just do a very quick math here. We take Kasumi's number here, 105 million, then you multiply it by 1.2 because of fire weakness, then you multiply by 1.3 again because of the DOG, the special effect. If I click enter, it's 163. That's even more than Makoto. Maybe I'll be a little bit more generous. towards Makoto. Maybe I'll decrease the 30% to 25%. And even then, it's very close. So they're not really that much of a difference. I think one reason is because of the global buff. Kasumi got a stronger global buff overall than Makoto Yuki. So I think that actually closes the gap a little bit. Now you might see that, okay, 82R0 core, very unfair. Fair point. But I still have other stuff to show you. So this is the current SOS 4.1. Makoto's boss literally. I got 102 million with this team. I recently got twins to A1. I was lucky enough to get in 2 multis, but that's not the point of the video. The point is just focus on the score, 102 million, which is not a lot, honestly. Because when you compare to Kasumi, which, by the way, her boss is also up for SOS, so I can actually test her as well. I'm using this team. It's again A2R0 core. I'll show you another different one later on. But I'm using Turbo, so no twins, no A1 twins. I'm not using Anj, I'm not using Dionysus, and I only got 7 million less. This one was 104. This Kasumi team, not even a full force team, I guess. It's only 7 million less. Actually, no, it's 102. But you get the point. It's even worse. That's why 104, 102. I have another one to show, and you can see this one. I was using only A1 core, A0 turbo. I wasn't even using Anj because she wasn't released back then. This was 3.5. I got 105. That's higher than what I got for Makoto Yuki. This second team, I was using A0 twins, and I got 105. A0 twins, by the way. This got higher somehow. I know it's a different update, but you still get the point. Makoto Yuki isn't that much better than Sumi. At least right now in global. Because again, his dedicated teammates are not here yet, so he likely has a higher ceiling. How much better? I don't know. Yukari is gonna come next update. I will definitely test that, so subscribe to see if you're interested. So should you pull Makoto Yuki? If you don't have any assassins, maybe your last assassin was like Queen or something, or Mesa, then Makoto Yuki is a good pickup because he is a strong assassin. Although, you know, from my testing, I did say that Kasumi and Makoto Yuki about the same, but again, you need to consider the future supports that he'll get. I have no idea how much better he's gonna get, but he is gonna get better. Another thing to consider is the anniversary. It's coming in like 1 month, so it depends on your gem count right now. You might want to just hold on to the gems, get some more information on the anniversary, because Makoto's banner is gonna end right before the anniversary, which we are likely to get some news by then. So just wait a bit if you're lacking gems, see what the anniversary is gonna offer, then plan accordingly.